Now, I just found out I was going to read this, and I told Jan if I knew I was going to read this, I would have put it in bigger font. This is the bio for Paul Venable. And he is a candidate for the U.S. Senate. He was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, as the eldest of 5 children to Paul and Marian Beaton Venable. He graduated from Columbus East High School in 1972 and attended the University of Cincinnati and the Ohio State University. Through personal effort and self-teaching, he developed a career in information technology and retired, amassing over 30 years of experience in the field. So if we have any issues here, you can help us, right? Paul became a member of the Constitution Party in 2004 and started teaching Constitution classes in Idaho shortly afterward. He served as chairman of the Constitution Party of Idaho from 2006 to 2013, during which time he was a candidate for the Idaho House in 2008 and lieutenant governor in 2011. As a personal outreach during those years, Paul and his wife Susan held and organized public and private forums to teach the principles of liberty and of the proper role of government through the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. He sounds like one of us, right? He also actively lobbied his state legislator in a private capacity for himself and his neighboring citizens on issues of tax relief, limited government, empowering the people, and strengthening the family. After moving to Missouri in 2018, Paul was elected as chairman of the Constitution Party of Missouri and was a candidate for Missouri Secretary of State in 2020. He is currently seeking election to the U.S. Senate. He is often referred to himself as a common citizen of little consequence. In his view, the message is more important than the messenger, and he sees nothing special about himself above his fellow citizens. And what is that message? That through the Constitution, the power over government is truly within the hands of we the people. Paul and Sue have raised 5 children, enjoying growing posterity, and celebrated their 38th anniversary last month. Please welcome Paul Venable.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm very, very grateful to be here and to be in a friendly audience. I have been in some audiences that are not, that may be a little bit hostile. I was in St. Louis a couple weeks ago, and it seemed that most of the audience didn't like anything I said. And one person actually stormed out. So, and I'll tell you some other experiences I'm having. You know, as a minor party, we don't get a lot of attention, but a couple things have happened to me in the last week alone. I got a message from a friend of mine who said that there's a word among the Democrats. A vote for Paul Venable is a vote for Eric Schmidt. What's up with that? I mean, why are the Democrats afraid of Paul Venable? Okay, so I mentioned that I was from Columbus, Ohio. I was a city kid, and I don't know how many of you are farmers. I thought that after last week, I probably would be talking to some farmers, and so around about the time I was 18, actually 17 or 16, and I was starting to wonder what I wanted to do for a living when I got out of high school. A couple things happened around that time. The draft ended the year before I turned 18, and the Vietnam War ended the year I turned 19. In fact, the month I turned 19, I remember the announcement came out, and my classmates, I was at the University of Cincinnati, my classmates were dancing on their desks. It was really significant. It was a really momentous time. But I remember saying to my dad, I said, you know, I don't know if I want to go to college right away. I'd like to work on a farm. I don't think he was able to wrap his mind around that. But he should have, because, closer? How's that? Okay, but he should have, because I got that inspiration from him. Let me tell you what I mean. Both of my parents grew up during the Depression. My father saw people in soup lines, but he wasn't in the soup line. You know why? Because he grew up, he spent his youth on his grandfather's farm in Ross County, Ohio. My mother's parents came from the Caribbean, and in the early 30s, they moved from the Bronx to Long Island, and my grandfather bought 40 lots. I don't know what that means. Maybe it's a quarter of an acre. So it may have been 10 acres. And so during that time, they prospered during the Depression. You know why? They had land. We understand, don't we, the value of land. And so that somehow got instilled in me. I never did get to work on the farm as a youth. I went through my entire career, and then shortly after I retired, we were in Idaho. We traded indoor space for outdoor space. It wasn't much, it was an acre. But on this acre, we had a quarter acre of an orchard. My wife and I have always had a large garden in whatever space we had. And we decided to raise goats, rabbits, and chickens. Now, remember, I didn't grow up on a farm. And there's some things you learn about raising your own food that you can't learn any other way. I process my own meat. When you butcher a goat, let me tell you what happens. Nothing until everything is done. It has to be cleaned up, it has to be packed up, and everything has to be left and clean just like it was before you started. You understand what I'm saying? You make that cut, and you're not done until you're done. My gosh, I wish I'd known that earlier, and I would have raised all of my kids on the farm. I had this one incident where I wanted to process a dozen chickens, and I had this chicken plucker, and it's a rotating thing. It just spun, and you held the chicken, and it just blew the feathers everywhere. And so I had a dozen, and I just pictured myself taking about 3 or 4 hours to process these chickens. You need hot water to process chickens. My wife had 4 large pots of hot water rotating off of the stove because the water has to be hot when you put the chicken in it. 12 hours later, I was done processing these chickens. Lesson learned. But everything has a cost, doesn't it? Everything has a cost. And one of the problems that we have in America today is that we have maybe a generation, maybe 2 generations, maybe 2.5 generations that believe that they can have freedom without responsibility or freedom without consequences. That's the challenge we deal with today. What I refer to as abortion era survivors. I actually refer to it as survivors of the new Holocaust, who are clamoring for the conditions that they survived. You understand? You hear what I'm saying? They are begging for rights in a document they've never read. We have a constitutional crisis in America today. Actually, we have 2. The first one is that I gotta warn you about something. I really didn't come to entertain you. You might not like what I say. That has happened to me in audiences lately. I want to share with you. You don't know the Constitution. You just don't. Someone tell me why we have 435 representatives in Congress. You know? Because Congress decided to cap it at that. Constitutionally, guess what? We're supposed to have one representative for 30,000 people. Now, the First Amendment, there were 12 original amendments to the Bill of Rights, and the first one would have raised that as the population grew until you got to 1 for 50,000. Okay, that still remains to be ratified. There isn't a 7-year limit on that. But what's interesting is, how do you think Congress would be different if we had 6,000 representatives and not 435 of them, or 535 cloistered in this building? They call it Capitol Dome Syndrome. Okay? How do you think that would change? We have the technology today to do that. Bring those guys home. Bring the representatives home. Have them meet in your capitals where you can watch them.
Amen.
Let me give you another example. Most people don't understand the Second Amendment, do they? I appreciate, Chris Ann Hall really gave us a lot to wrap our minds around, didn't she? And she quoted the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Most people I talk to remember the second part, but they don't remember the first part. Okay? A well-regulated militia being what? Necessary to the security of a free state. What does that mean? Let's back it up. If we want a free state, we need to be able to protect ourselves with a well-regulated militia, and that is the reason that you and I need to be armed. But it gets better than that. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15. This is the one after 14, and 14 says, Congress shall have power to call forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. Did you hear me? Repel invasions. So where are your conservative heroes calling out the invasions that's taking place on our southern border and calling for the militia to repel the invasion? Where's Rand Paul? Where's Ted Cruz? Where's Josh Hawley? Where's Eric Schmidt? Where are your, by the way, let me take a minute because I beat on the conservative heroes. Where are your liberal anti-war heroes who should be decrying the war in Ukraine? Let me share something with you. While Congress is dividing you, better yet, while the Republicans and the Democrats are dividing each other, are dividing us, they are united. Okay? But as I said, the Second Amendment gets better. Clause 15. Congress shall have power to arm the militia and provide for their discipline. Do you know what that means? When Congress has the power to do something, you know what it means? It means they're responsible to do that. And if the Congress is responsible to do something, you know what else it means? It means it's their duty to spend the money from the public treasury to put the guns in your hands so you can defend yourself. Has anyone told you that? Have you, did you know that? I mean, it's right there in the Constitution. So picture this. In under I can read this in under an hour. It's just 5,000 words, okay? If you, I promise you, if you read the Constitution, and I brought some with me, that's the US Constitution. The Missouri Constitution takes a little longer to read.
too long.
Okay? But if you read the Missouri Constitution once, you will know more than your elected representatives. If you read it twice, you'll know more than just about any attorney. So we've got a constitutional crisis in America. We don't know it. Here's the other constitutional crisis. They don't know it. Who's they? It's the people that you've elected to office and the people they've appointed. You know how I know that? One, because they don't understand what it says. I'm beating on the Second Amendment, but let me give you an example. The retiring senator whose seat I'm running for took credit for shepherding gun control legislation through the Senate. Okay? Can you imagine that? So, was he ignorant of what's in the Constitution?
No.
Or is he in direct defiance to it?
Yeah.
Now, so, really, I listened to Chris Ann, as you did, and she's struggling with these rules Congress is making for itself in preparing for a Article 5 convention. Chris, I'm gonna make it simple for you. The Constitution is not a political document. It is a compact between the states, and then it is a contractual agreement between those who serve under it. And you know what contracts them? Their oath. It's a contractual agreement between you, we the people, and those who serve under it, that they will support the Constitution. And I've got great news for you. The Constitution has an answer for people who violate their oath. And I bet you do know what this is. What's the answer? Pardon me?
Impeach?
Well, there's an easier answer, and I'll tell you
Vote 'em
what.
out.
Huh?
Vote them out.
Okay, there's one. That's one idea. Vote them out. How many elections did we have this year? We got a general election, we got a primary, did we have a municipal election earlier? Okay, so 3 elections, 365 days. How many did we have last year? We probably had a municipal election. So let's say we had 4 elections in 730 days. Proportionally, let me share something with you. We take more potty breaks in a day than we vote in 2 years. Wrap your mind around that. That's how much we get involved. Well, probably not you. Okay, you're probably a little more involved. You're a lot more involved. But as an American people, that's as much as we get involved, and we think we've done something. You know, we spend millions in court fighting over what happened one day out of 730. Guess what? The wheels of government are grinding 24/7, 365. And I commend you because you folks are in here at least meeting every week and keeping your eyes on government. Let me give you some other tools. This was in the Constitution, and it's a little long, so I'm going to take it out and read it to you. Oh, well, if I can find it. Oh, here it is. Thank you. How many of you have heard of the 14th Amendment, Section 3? Someone's nodding. You've heard of it?
I've heard it, but I can't recite it.
Okay. I believe by providence, the Lord knew what he was doing when we received the Constitution. Throughout time, we managed to get what we needed. And here is what the 14th Amendment, Section 3 says. Now, someone mentioned impeachment. Impeachment is specific to the president. Article 14, Section 3 is specific to everybody else. Here's what it says. I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm going to read it. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress, or elected president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States, or under any state, who having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof, but Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. We, the people, have power. We have teeth. The Constitution has teeth that gives us the power to do what we need to do when we need to do it. What it tells you is that you don't have to wait for an election to remove someone from office. But the problem is, we haven't been told that. And what's worse is we haven't read it. Let's change that. You know, in fact, I'm gonna bring my constitutions out and take them all. Okay, everybody please take one. My campaign for Senate is designed to use the Constitution to teach the Constitution. Let me tell you what I mean. How many of you don't know how to cook? Okay, great, all of you. All right, is there anyone in here who is there anyone, no one would admit it, right? Is there anyone in here whose parents taught them to cook by throwing a book at them and said, hey, figure this out? Yes? No? None of you? Okay. Now, you know how I know all of you have survived your cooking? Because you're here today. So all of you know how to cook. Okay, and you learned to cook by doing. I've taught Constitution class since 2004. I've sat people in classrooms. I've sat in a classroom with Chris Ann Hall. And a lot of this stuff is pretty heavy. What I've discovered in my campaign is that we need to cook with the Constitution. What do I mean? We need to use the Constitution to learn what it means, to learn how it works, to practice with it. Because then when we do that, we understand, we can then cook. Woo! Am I out of time? Right? It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll have to.
Well, you get the mic back after we do a little bit of,
Okay.
you're gonna stay around for questions.
I'll stay around. All right,
Okay.
thank you.